Hi, everyone. So tonight I want to talk to you about one of the major reasons why the GOP lost the 2022 midterms. And I do, as a Republican, consider the GOP's performance in the 2022 midterms a huge loss, even though we recaptured the U.S. House of Representatives. So that major reason is that Republicans and conservatives throughout this country, both at the RNC, on grassroots levels, or just voters at home, all of us, myself included, did not understand that just because women across this country were not rioting or protesting or burning down businesses, that did not mean that they were not angry about Roe v. Wade being overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. We did not understand that the way they were going to protect themselves, or the way they were going to show their displeasure at what had happened, was by voting. We naively thought, I think a lot of this also came from the fact that we had watched the George Floyd protests. We naively thought that that was the model of objection to things happening in the federal government or state or local governments, that the model that leftists used was to burn things down, to riot, to protest. But women in this country chose a different path. They chose to be quiet. They chose to go out and exercise their right to vote and to not really brag about it, to not really share publicly what they were doing. And what I found so interesting was that the day before the election, I was watching CNN and MSNBC and seeing what really the main commentators felt about the upcoming election. And so many of them were saying, I wish Democrats had not been pushing abortion as the number one issue. Van Jones said something like this: I wish we'd talked more about inflation, the economy. So those people on the media channels, those people like Van Jones, like other liberal commentators, they didn't see this coming. They didn't think that young women, and really women of all ages throughout this country, were going to go out and vote solely because of abortion. But the people who did know were the grassroots activists of the Democrat Party, were those young liberals you see on Twitter who you dismiss right off because you think, oh, what are they really doing? They're just tweet warriors. What are they really pushing? Those people knew that women across this country were going to go out and vote because of abortion. And the evidence of this really is in the numbers. This isn't just my opinion. The evidence of what happened with women throughout this country comes down to data. And I'll just explain. Exit polls showed 72% of women ages 18 to 29 voted for Democrats in House races nationwide. And in Pennsylvania, 77% of young women voted for John Fetterman, helping to secure his victory over Mehmet Oz, the Republican candidate for Senate. So this data lines up extremely well with the races that we couldn't understand how we lost. Places like Pennsylvania, places like Georgia, where you have massive youth populations in cities like Atlanta. There are these states throughout this country where Republicans for generations have had such a great ability to get in, to get youth excited about them, and really to carry home victory after victory. But the change now is that young women in this country are dealing with an economy that is in shambles. And what I find so interesting is that Joe Biden's approval rating as president was 44 to 43% on a good day during this whole midterm process. But young women throughout this country knew that they had to vote for Joe Biden's party because the economic situation is so bad. And I'll just give you a reference. I today went into Walgreens and bought a thing of butter, a pack of butter, 4 sticks, and it was $6. And this was the house brand. Young women are dealing with that throughout this country. The butter's just a silly example, but it's the same thing with student loan debt, same thing with trying to buy a home or even to get a rental. People always talk about buying homes for young people, but in the reality of it, just to get a rental, that's a huge amount of money up front. So for young women across this country, they're dealing with crippling student loan debt. They're dealing with having to pay for maybe a lease for a car. They're dealing with inflation. They're dealing with all of this economic turmoil. And then we had a situation where Roe v. Wade was overturned, which I'm very happy about. I'm pro-life, but this happened. And young women throughout this country said, hold on a second. So we're dealing with all this economic turmoil. And now you want to add in a specific issue, which is us having to carry babies to full term, having to make this sort of life commitment to children and all of this onto our plate. And the reason why I talk about women in the economy and not young men is because this was not added on to the plate of young men throughout this country. It just wasn't. So young women throughout this country voted for Democrats, not because of the economy, but for abortion in order to survive in this current economy. And I don't necessarily know how Republicans deal with this because it is part of the party platform to be pro-life. I would be very disappointed and angry if Republicans were not pro-life. But in this current economic situation, millions of young women throughout this country are in a position where they truly feel like if they don't vote to protect abortion, if they don't vote to protect abortion, and if they don't push through ballot measures that enshrine abortion to state constitutions, because those happened quite a bit throughout the 2022 midterms as well. If they don't do that, then their economic future is going to be taken away from them. And that is something Republicans simply don't understand. I didn't even understand it until afterwards, when I was sitting there thinking, how could we have gotten it so wrong? How could even the most cynical Republicans have gotten it so wrong when they even felt like we might have at least a red edge, if not a red wave? How could we have gotten it so wrong? We got it so wrong because we spent so much time trying to cater on an economic level that we forgot that people are not driven solely by economic factors. They're driven by the things that will impact their own personal economy. So what I mean by that is young women didn't vote for Democrats because they think Democrats will lower inflation. They have no position or no belief that Republicans or Democrats are going to correct inflation. They voted for Democrats because they believe and they know that they will protect the pro-choice way of being. They will protect reproductive rights. And by voting for them, they're voting for their own economic security. Abortion and economic security are now the same issue for young women across this country. And I don't really know how Republicans are going to deal with that, seeing as our party platform is pro-life, our voters tend to be pro-life, and it's the right thing to be pro-life. So just in closing, when you're sitting there thinking, how are we going to, or the fact that we're going to win in 2024 because of how perilous the country is being led by Joe Biden, how terrible it is, understand that that's what's happening right now. And young women across this country in an off year, in a year where there isn't a man or a man on a presidential ticket who will get to choose the next Supreme Court justice who could help re-enshrine reproductive rights and fix the fact that Roe v. Wade was overturned in the minds of many leftists. If they're willing to vote en masse for Democrats in an off year, what are they willing to do in a year where they have a president on the ballot who in their minds will protect reproductive rights and push back pro-choice legislation into the public square and make sure that it's voted on and approved in Congress? Thank you, and make sure to follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Bye, guys.